The recording resumes, showing Murphy's team moving through the station's maintenance tunnels. Each of them carries an assortment of tools, spare parts, and what appears to be sporting equipment. Is that? A baseball bat, Ambassador Rella asks incredulously. Yes, I confirm. Along with 2 tennis rackets, a golf club, and something called a hockey stick. Murphy claimed they were essential diagnostic tools. The Voltax delegation begins sparking in binary code that roughly translates to does not compute. The gravity fluctuations were caused by a misalignment in the central quantum harmonic resonator. According to all known physics and engineering principles, this misalignment should have been impossible to correct without a complete system shutdown and restart. A process that would have taken approximately 48 hours. I fast-forward the recording to show Murphy's team reaching the gravity control center. The scene that follows still makes several safety officers in the chamber need their personal anti-anxiety medications. Using the baseball bat as a makeshift lever, the tennis rackets as vibration dampeners, and the golf club to, in Murphy's words, give it a good whack, they managed to realign the quantum harmonic resonator in 17 minutes. The recording shows Murphy's triumphant grin as the gravity stabilizes. Behind him, his team is high-fiving each other while the alien engineers stare in absolute bewilderment. But here's the truly interesting part, I continue. When questioned about their methods during the subsequent investigation, Murphy explained that he got the idea from playing something called pinball in his youth. Apparently, the quantum harmonic resonator's fluctuation pattern reminded him of a stuck pinball, and he decided to treat it accordingly. They used games as inspiration for station repairs. Representative Pax Uhl looks like he might faint. Oh, it gets better, I assure him. The hockey stick. They used it to clear a frozen coolant line by, and again I quote, playing space hockey with a compressed air canister. The recording shows this particular feat, which somehow managed to clear all 16 interconnected coolant lines in one shot. The human technicians celebrated by holding an impromptu hockey tournament in the maintenance bay, much to the confusion of their alien colleagues. When the Safety Review Board demanded an explanation for their unorthodox methods, Murphy simply shrugged and said, sometimes you gotta stop thinking like an engineer and start thinking like a kid with a toy that needs fixing. I bring up the official incident report. The board spent 3 months analyzing their methods. They brought in experts from 17 different fields. They ran thousands of simulations. And you know what they found? The chamber waits in tense silence. Not only did the human solution work, but it also identified a fundamental flaw in the quantum harmonic resonator's design. The game-inspired maintenance technique they developed has since been implemented across 12 other stations, reducing gravity system failures by 89%. But they turned vital station maintenance into a game, Ambassador Rella protests. Exactly, I nod. They saw past the complexity of the system and reduced it to something simple and intuitive. While our engineers were consulting manuals and calculating failure probabilities, the humans were thinking about Newton's laws of motion in terms of playground physics. The recording shows the aftermath, Murphy's team conducting training sessions for the alien engineers, teaching them how to use sports equipment for emergency repairs. The sight of a dignified Zentarian engineer practicing their golf swing with a quantum calibration tool is particularly memorable. The incident review concluded with a recommendation to stock all space stations with a full set of human sporting equipment, classified as emergency maintenance tools. Though I should note that the subsequent spike in maintenance bay hockey tournaments was not an intended consequence. I can see the confusion and reluctant admiration warring on the faces before me. The humans had taken some of our most advanced technology and fixed it using the principles of recreational activities. It was simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. Murphy's team received both a formal reprimand for protocol violations and the Galactic Engineering Innovation Award. They displayed the reprimand in their break room and used the award as a hockey puck. This draws a few nervous laughs from the chamber. Even Representative Pax Uhl manages a slight smile. The space station crisis taught us something important about humans, I conclude. Their ability to simplify complex problems, combined with their willingness to try unconventional solutions, makes them uniquely valuable in crisis situations. They don't just think outside the box, they turn the box into sports equipment and use it to save lives. The chamber falls into thoughtful silence. I can almost see them processing this new perspective, trying to reconcile their love of protocols with the undeniable success of human improvisation. And before anyone asks, I add, yes, the station's maintenance crew still holds weekly hockey tournaments. They claim it's for emergency preparedness training. We've decided not to argue. I let the chamber absorb the space station incident for a moment before activating the next holographic recording. This one always makes the First Contact Protocol Committee need collective therapy. Now, let's discuss what happened in Sector 9. I begin, watching several representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. The blob entity incident. The hologram shows a massive, shimmering entity floating in space. Its surface ripples with patterns of light that somehow manage to be both beautiful and unsettling. Standard first contact procedures are among our most sacred protocols, I explain. Developed over millennia, refined through countless encounters, these procedures ensure peaceful and productive initial meetings between civilizations. Ambassador Rella's warning appendages twitched nervously. The blob entity was unlike anything we'd encountered before. Precisely, I nod, which is why we sent our most experienced first contact team, led by Senior Diplomatic Coordinator Laura Hayes and her human support staff. The recording shows the first contact vessel approaching the blob entity. Everything starts according to protocol: the standard greeting signals, the mathematical sequence broadcasts, the universal peace symbols. The entity wasn't responding to any of our traditional communication methods, I continue. After 6 days of attempting standard protocols, the non-human members of the diplomatic team were ready to classify the entity as non-sentient and move on. I paused the recording. That's when Coordinator Hayes did something that violated approximately. Let me check. Yes, all of them. She violated all the protocols. The chamber collectively gasps. Representative Paxol's purple complexion turns slightly green. Hayes looked at the entity's light patterns and said, and this is directly from the mission log, "Hey, that looks like a dance party." The recording resumes, showing Hayes ordering her team to modify the ship's external lighting system. What follows still makes our protocol specialists need medication. Instead of continuing with standard mathematical sequences, Hayes programmed the lights to replicate something called disco. She claimed the entity's patterns reminded her of an old Earth entertainment venue called Studio 54. The hologram shows the diplomatic vessel beginning to pulse with rhythmic light patterns. The human crew added what they called a soundtrack, broadcasting it along with the light show. They played something called Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees, I explain. When questioned later about this choice, Hayes said, and I quote, "Everyone loves disco, even space blobs." Several members of the chamber look like they're about to protest, but then they see what happens next in the recording. The blob entity begins to change its patterns, matching the rhythm of the ship's lights. Within minutes, the entity was responding. It wasn't just mimicking, it was improvising, creating its own patterns that complemented the human's display. Hayes called it, perhaps inappropriately, a cosmic dance-off. The recording shows the increasingly complex exchange of light patterns. The human crew added more songs, something called the Village People's EMCA, which prompted the entity to split into multiple synchronized forms. What happened next revolutionized our understanding of non-traditional intelligence, I continue. The entity wasn't just communicating, it was expressing itself through movement and light, much like humans do in their social dancing rituals. Ambassador Rella raises a trembling warning appendage, but the protocols were completely useless in this situation, I finish. Our mathematical sequences and universal symbols meant nothing to an entity that experienced reality through rhythm and movement. The human's intuitive leap to try communication through shared artistic expression succeeded where millennia of careful diplomatic procedures failed. The recording shows the breakthrough moment, the entity forming itself into shapes that mimicked human dance moves. Hayes and her crew responded by teaching it something called the electric slide. Over the next 3 days, the human diplomatic team established a complete communication protocol based entirely on disco music and dance patterns. They managed to learn that the entity was a scout for an entire civilization of similar beings. all of whom apparently share an appreciation for Earth's 1970s dance culture. I bring up the official first contact report. The entity's civilization has since become one of our most valuable allies. They've shared remarkable insights about space-time manipulation, though they insist on delivering all scientific data through what humans call choreographed dance numbers. The chamber sits in stunned silence. The Voltax delegation has stopped sparking entirely, possibly from shock. When the first contact review board asked Hayes to explain her unprecedented approach, she responded, "Sometimes you've got to read the room, or in this case, the space blob. If something looks like it wants to dance, maybe skip the math and just boogie with it." Representative Pax Ol finally finds his voice. But how could she have known it would work? "She didn't," I reply simply. That's what makes humans so remarkable in these situations. They're willing to try the ridiculous when the reasonable fails. They see patterns we miss because we're too focused on following established procedures. I show the final clip, the diplomatic vessel departing from the encounter, its lights pulsing in what the humans called a farewell dance party. The blob entity splits into multiple forms, creating a spectacular light show that spells out "stay alive" and pulsing disco patterns. The incident led to the creation of an entirely new section in our first contact protocols, I explain. Though I should note that the human suggestion to title it "Get Down with Your Bad Self" was diplomatically rejected in favor of non-traditional communication methodologies. A few nervous laughs ripple through the chamber. I can see them struggling with the implications. How do you write protocols for a species that succeeds by ignoring protocols? The blob entity civilization now maintains an embassy in Earth orbit, I conclude. It's the only embassy in the galaxy with a permanent dance floor and a requirement that all diplomatic communications must be, in their words, groovy. I pause the recording, letting the chamber see the final image: human diplomats and light-based entities performing what Hayes dubbed the interstellar hustle. And yes, I add, disco music is now classified as essential diplomatic equipment. Though we're still debating whether to include platform shoes in the standard first contact kit, the chamber has fallen into a contemplative silence after the series of case studies. I take this opportunity to present our scientific findings, activating a new holographic display showing brain scan comparisons between various species. Over the past decade, our xenobiologists and behavioral scientists have conducted extensive research into what makes humans so uniquely unpredictable. I begin, bringing up a series of neural mapping charts. The results were fascinating. The display shows side-by-side comparisons of different species responding to crisis scenarios. The Zentarian brains light up in organized, sequential patterns. The Myclorian neural networks activate in precise, calculated waves. The human brains, however, look like fireworks displays. What you're seeing is the fundamental difference in problem-solving approaches, I explain. Most species process information in linear, logical sequences. Humans, on the other hand, process everything simultaneously, creating what our scientists call neural chaos patterns. Representative Pax Ol squints at the display. That looks incredibly inefficient. That's what we thought too, I nod. Until we discovered something remarkable. These chaos patterns allow humans to make connections that more organized thinking processes miss entirely. They don't just think outside the box, they forget the box exists. The hologram shifts to show various crisis simulations. When faced with danger, most species follow a predictable pattern. Assess the threat, consult learned procedures, implement appropriate protocols. Humans? They do something our scientists call practical nonsense. Practical nonsense. Ambassador Rella's warning appendages twitch in confusion. It's a technical term we had to invent specifically for humans, I explain. They combine completely unrelated concepts to create solutions that shouldn't work but somehow do. Like using coffee as a tunnel stabilizer, sports equipment as engineering tools, or disco music for first contact. The display shows a complex web of neural connections. Humans call this gut instinct or thinking on their feet. Our research shows it's actually a highly sophisticated form of rapid pattern recognition combined with creative association. They process millions of data points subconsciously, then jump to conclusions that bypass logical reasoning entirely. I bring up the success rate statistics. In standard situations, Protocol-based approaches work perfectly well. But in unprecedented scenarios, human practical nonsense outperforms traditional methods by an average of 278%. But the risks of voice calls from the back of the chamber. How can they possibly assess dangers without proper protocols? That's another fascinating aspect, I respond, switching to a new display showing adrenaline response patterns. Humans don't ignore risks, they process them differently. While we carefully calculate probabilities, humans use something they call Murphy's Law. Another scientific principle, Representative Pax Ol asks hopefully. Not exactly. It's the assumption that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So instead of trying to prevent problems, humans prepare to deal with them as they arise. It's like they expect the universe to throw surprises at them, and they've turned adaptability into an art form. The hologram shows a comparison of risk assessment methods. Our traditional approach involves careful analysis of all variables, leading to standardized responses. The human approach involves accepting that chaos is inevitable and preparing to improvise. I bring up the neural patterns again. We've identified 3 key factors that make humans uniquely suited for protocol-free problem solving. First, their brains are literally wired for creative association. Second, they have an unusually high tolerance for uncertainty. And third, they possess what we've termed selective common sense. Selective common sense, the chamber murmurs in confusion. Yes, I confirm. Humans can simultaneously hold incredibly sophisticated scientific knowledge and surprisingly simple practical solutions in their minds. They know exactly how a quantum harmonic resonator works, but they'll still try fixing it with a baseball bat if that seems like the fastest solution. The display shows examples of human solutions across various fields. This combination of characteristics makes humans invaluable in crisis situations. They don't just solve problems, they redefine them. While we see a malfunctioning gravity generator, they see a stuck pinball. While we see an alien entity, they see a potential dance partner. I switch to the final set of data. Our research concludes that forcing humans to follow standard safety protocols actually impairs their natural problem-solving abilities. It's like trying to make a Voltax use sign language technically possible, but it completely misses the point of having natural electrical communication. The chamber absorbs this information with a mix of fascination and horror. I can see them struggling with the implications. But how can we trust such an unpredictable approach, Ambassador Rella asks. Because it works, I reply simply. Our decade-long study shows that human practical nonsense has saved more lives, solved more crises, and achieved more breakthroughs than any protocol-based approach in similar situations. I bring up the final neural map, showing the beautiful chaos of human creative problem-solving in action. We've learned that human unpredictability isn't a bug, it's a feature. Their ability to make illogical connections, trust their instincts, and improvise solutions is precisely what makes them valuable allies. The display shows a montage of successful human interventions across the galaxy. Mining accidents resolved with beverages. Space station repairs accomplished with sporting equipment. First contact established through disco music. The data is clear, I conclude. Humans don't need our safety briefings. They don't need our protocols. What they need is the freedom to be exactly what they are, brilliantly, impossibly, successfully unpredictable. I pause, watching the chamber process this revelation. Or as Station Chief Barnes put it, sometimes the best safety protocol is knowing when to throw the protocol book out the airlock and trust your gut. Preferably with coffee. Looking around the chamber now, I can see the shift in attitudes. The initial outrage has been replaced by something between resignation and admiration. Even Representative Pax Ol's purple complexion has returned to its normal shade. And so, I say, deactivating the last holographic display, we arrive at our current situation. The High Council's decision to exempt humans from standard safety briefings wasn't made lightly. It was based on extensive research, countless case studies, and one particularly memorable incident involving a human engineer, a malfunctioning quantum drive, and something called a rubber duck. The chamber stirs with curiosity, but I wave off the unasked questions. That's a story for another time. Perhaps after we've all had several rounds of nerve-calming beverages. I bring up the final document, the Human Protocol Exemption Resolution. Instead of forcing humans to sit through briefings they'll inevitably ignore, we've created a new category of protocols specifically for them. I present to you the guidelines for human non-standard problem resolution approaches. The text appears in the air, and I begin reading the key points. Guideline 1: when a human says they have a weird idea, clear the area and let them proceed. History shows the weird ideas often work best. Guideline 2: if a human requests unusual items during a crisis, provide them immediately. Yes, even if it's coffee, sports equipment, or disco music. Guideline 3: when a human says they have a gut feeling, treat it with the same respect as a full mathematical analysis. Their gut feelings have a statistically higher success rate anyway. Guideline 4: always keep records of human solutions, no matter how ridiculous they seem. Today's absurd fix might be tomorrow's standard procedure. I pause, watching the chamber's reaction. We've also included a list of recommended emergency supplies to be added to all facilities where humans work. Note that coffee is listed as a Class 1 essential resource, right alongside oxygen and power cells. Ambassador Rella raises a warning appendage. But what about accountability? How do we monitor their actions without protocols? I smile. That brings us to the most interesting part. We're not removing all protocols, we're just changing how we apply them. Instead of giving humans pre-crisis briefings, we've implemented what we call the after-action documentation protocol. I bring up a new form, causing several safety officers to gasp at its simplicity. Humans are required to explain what they did after the fact. The form has 3 questions. What was the problem? What did you do? Why did it work? The chamber erupts in protests about the form's brevity, but I raise my hand for silence. We've found that humans are much more thorough in explaining their actions after they've succeeded. Plus, it gives our research teams valuable insights into human practical nonsense methodologies. I pull up some example forms. My personal favorite is from Mining Station Beta 4 problem: critical reactor breach. Solution: reverse the polarity and hit it with a wrench. Why it worked? Because sometimes machines just need a good whack. A ripple of nervous laughter spreads through the chamber. The Voltax delegation begins sparking in what appears to be amusement. The universe is chaos, I conclude. Most species respond to chaos with order, protocols, procedures, careful planning. Humans? They fight chaos with chaos and somehow come out on top. Our job isn't to change that, but to embrace it. I activate the final vote tally display. The Human Protocol Exemption Resolution passed with a 73% majority. Yes, most of those votes came in after the coffee incident at Mining Station Alpha 7. Amazing how near-death experiences and successful rescues can change perspectives. The chamber has fallen into accepting silence. Well, mostly accepting. Representative Pax Ul still looks like he's suffering from indigestion, but that might be from the coffee he tried earlier. So let it be officially recorded, I announce, raising my ceremonial safety gavel. Humans are hereby exempt from all standard safety briefings. Instead, they will be provided with coffee, random supplies they request, and the freedom to solve problems in whatever bizarre way they devise. I bring down the gavel with a satisfying thunk. Though I should note that the rubber duck incident has led to a small addendum: all human solutions involving bathtub toys must be documented with video recordings. For scientific purposes, of course. As the chamber begins to clear, I notice several representatives discreetly making notes about coffee supplies and disco music. I smile, remembering something Station Chief Barnes once told me. The best safety protocol is the one that keeps people alive, whether it's in the manual or not. And if all else fails, there's always coffee. Looking at my schedule for tomorrow, I see I have a meeting about implementing rubber duck debugging across all quantum computing facilities. I should probably stock up on nerve-calming beverages. Something tells me we're going to need them. Why humans are the only species allowed to skip safety briefings? Order in the chamber. I slam my ceremonial safety gavel against the quantum-reinforced podium, watching it shake under the impact. My name is Blork T. Az, Chief Safety Officer of the Galactic Federation, and right now I'm developing what humans call a headache. The Grand Chamber of Galactic Safety erupts in another wave of protests. The Zentarians are turning their usual shade of outraged purple. The Myclorians have extended all 4 of their warning appendages, and the Voltax delegation. Well, they're just being Voltax, shooting small sparks of indignation from their antenna. This is preposterous, shouts Representative Pax Ul of the Zentarian Safety Coalition. You cannot simply exempt an entire species from mandatory safety briefings. It goes against everything we stand for. I take a deep breath, counting to 10 in standard galactic units. The motion has already been approved by the High Council, I remind them, trying to keep my voice steady. The data speaks for itself. Data, scoffs Ambassador Rella from the Myclorian Empire. Her warning appendages wave frantically in the air. What about tradition? What about the sacred scrolls of safety? What about the 3,000 guidelines of cautionary conduct? From my elevated position at the podium, I can see the entire assembly of the 247th Annual Galactic Safety Protocol Review. Representatives from over 500 species, all gathered here in their color-coded safety suits, all absolutely losing their minds over this one simple amendment to Regulation 7249B, subsection 42, human exemption from standard safety briefing procedures. Please, I raise all 3 of my hands in a calming gesture. Let me explain the reasoning behind this decision. Reasoning, a high-pitched squeal, comes from the Voltax section. There can be no reasoning behind such madness. Safety briefings are the cornerstone of galactic civilization. I pull up the holographic display, which shows a montage of security footage. Over the past 50 Earth years since humans joined the Galactic Federation, we've observed something rather unique about their species. The chamber falls into a suspicious silence. Even the Voltax stops sparking. As this assembly knows, every species must attend a safety briefing before engaging in any potentially hazardous activity. These briefings are comprehensive, covering every possible scenario and proper response protocol. I pause for dramatic effect. However, we've noticed that humans tend to, how do I put this diplomatically? They tend to do exactly the opposite of what they're told in these briefings. That's exactly why they need more briefings, shouts someone from the back. No, I counter, that's exactly why they need none. I bring up another holographic display, this one showing success rates in crisis situations. When humans attend our safety briefings, they become constrained by our protocols. They overthink. They second-guess their instincts. But when they don't attend the briefings, their success rate in crisis management jumps by 327%. The chamber erupts in gasps and murmurs. A few representatives faint, their personal safety force fields automatically deploying to cushion their fall. But that's impossible, stammers Representative Pax Ul. The protocols are designed to maximize survival probability. For most species, yes, I nod sagely. But humans? They have this peculiar ability to, what's their phrase? Wing it. They assess situations in real time, adapt to changing conditions, and most importantly, they think creatively under pressure. Creative thinking during an emergency, Ambassador Rella looks like she might be sick. That's not in any protocol manual. Exactly, I say, allowing myself a small smile. And that's precisely why this exemption is necessary. We've found that humans actually perform better when they don't know the proper way to handle a situation. They rely on something they call gut instinct instead. The chamber descends into chaos again. I can hear phrases like safety heresy and protocol blasphemy being thrown around. The Voltax are now shooting sparks in Morse code, spelling out their objections in at least 15 different languages. I raise my gavel again, ready to restore order. Sometimes I wonder if humans are really worth all this trouble. Then I remember the incident at Mining Station Alpha 7 and the space station crisis of 2184, and that bizarre first contact situation with the blob entity of Sector 9. But those are stories for another time. Right now I have a chamber full of safety-obsessed aliens to calm down, and somewhere out there, a human is probably solving an impossible problem by doing something completely ridiculous that somehow, against all odds and protocols, actually works. The sound of shocked gasps from the chamber brings back memories of the Mining Station Alpha 7 incident. 3 solar cycles ago, this very event started changing my perspective on human approaches to safety protocols. Perhaps I say, activating the holoprojector, a practical example, would help explain our decision. The chamber lights dim as the recording begins. Mining Station Alpha 7 materializes before us, a massive structure carved into the metallic asteroid belt of the Proxima Centauri system. The station's external lighting casts an eerie glow across its jagged surface. Standard mining operation, I narrate, watching the familiar scene unfold. 156 workers, including a human crew of 12 led by Station Chief Amanda Barnes. All safety protocols were followed to the letter. Triple redundant shield generators, backup life support systems, emergency teleporters, everything by the book. The recording zooms in on the primary mining shaft. Warning lights flash across the screen. At 0347 GST, mining shaft 3 detected unusual seismic activity. Standard protocols dictated an immediate evacuation and activation of containment fields. The Zentarian safety officer on duty, following Protocol 89C, initiated emergency procedures. Representative Pax Ul nods approvingly from his seat. Textbook response. Yes, I agree, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Textbook. Until we discovered that 23 workers were trapped behind a collapsed section of the tunnel, beyond the reach of emergency teleporters due to mineral interference. The recording shows the chaos unfolding in the control room. The Zentarian safety officer consulting his manual, the Myclorian engineers running calculations, and Station Chief Barnes. Well, Barnes doing what humans do best, ignoring every single protocol in existence. The standard rescue procedure would have taken approximately 7 hours to implement, I continue. Time the trapped workers didn't have, with oxygen levels dropping and the tunnel structure becoming increasingly unstable. Ambassador Rella raises one of her warning appendages. But the protocols exist for a reason. Any deviation could have what I interrupt. Succeeded spectacularly. Because that's exactly what happened. The recording shifts to Shaft 3's emergency access point. Station Chief Barnes and her human crew are gathering equipment, mining lasers, portable shield generators, and, is that a food replicator? Against direct orders from the safety officer, Chief Barnes and her crew implemented what they called Plan B. Or, as she put it, let's get creative. The chamber watches in horror as the humans begin their rescue operation. First, they reprogrammed the mining lasers to operate at frequencies specifically forbidden by Safety Regulation 455X. Then, they modified the shield generators to create a series of small, interconnected safe zones instead of one large containment field, a technique that violated at least 12 different safety protocols. But the food replicator, I say, unable to hide my amazement even after all this time, that was the real stroke of what humans call genius. The recording shows Barnes ordering the replicator to produce hundreds of liters of a beverage humans call coffee, the strongest possible blend. The caffeine-rich liquid was pumped through the laser-carved tunnels, where it reacted with the mineral deposits in a way nobody had anticipated. The resulting chemical reaction created a temporary hardening effect, stabilizing the tunnel walls long enough for the rescue team to reach the trapped workers. Stunned silence fills the chamber. The recording shows all 23 workers being safely evacuated just minutes before the entire tunnel system collapsed. 3 separate safety review boards investigated this incident, I continue. They all came to the same conclusion: everything the humans did violated established protocols. Every single action they took went against centuries of carefully developed safety procedures. And yet, I pause, letting the implications sink in. And yet they succeeded where our protocols would have failed. The rescue took 43 minutes from start to finish. Not a single life was lost. The only casualty was the Zentarian safety officer's pride, and possibly his digestive system after Chief Barnes convinced him to try some of that coffee. Representative Pax Ul turns a deeper shade of purple. But the risks they took were calculated, I counter. Just not in a way we understand. You see, while we were busy consulting manuals and running probability scenarios, Station Chief Barnes was, what did she call it? Oh yes, trusting her gut. I bring up the official incident report, highlighting the human crew's statements. When asked about their unorthodox rescue method, Chief Barnes said, and I quote, "Sometimes you've got to think outside the box. If the box isn't working, turn it into something else, preferably something with coffee." The recording ends, returning the chamber to full illumination. I can see the conflict on their faces, the desire to condemn the humans' reckless disregard for protocol warring with the undeniable success of their methods. This wasn't an isolated incident, I continue. We've documented hundreds of similar cases where human intuition and creative problem-solving achieved better results than our established protocols. They don't ignore safety, they just approach it differently. But how can we trust them? A voice calls from the back of the chamber. How do we know they won't get themselves killed without proper briefings? I smile, remembering Chief Barnes' response during her hearing. As she explained to the review board, humans have been finding creative ways to survive since we figured out how to make pointy sticks. Sometimes the safest option isn't the one in the manual, it's the one you make up on the spot. And the coffee ambassador, Rella asks, her curiosity apparently overcoming her shock. That, I admit, remains a uniquely human solution. Though I should note that after the incident, Mining Station Alpha 7 updated its emergency supplies to include industrial quantities of coffee, just in case. The chamber erupts in nervous laughter, and I notice a few representatives discreetly making notes. Perhaps they're finally beginning to understand why humans need this exemption. Or maybe they're just writing down the coffee thing. Either way, this was just the first incident that led to our current situation. The space station crisis would prove even more enlightening about human problem-solving methods. But looking at the still stunned faces before me, I decide to give them a moment to process this one first. After all, safety first. Usually. Unless you're human. Then it's more like safety first, coffee second, creative solution third, and protocols. Well, protocols whenever they actually make sense. The chamber has barely recovered from the mining incident story when I clear my throat, preparing to present the next piece of evidence. Sometimes the best way to deal with shocked aliens is to shock them even more. Now let's discuss the space station crisis of 2184, I announce, activating another holographic recording. This incident occurred at Nexus Hub 7, our largest civilian space station in the Orion Arm. The massive space station materializes above the chamber floor. A beautiful piece of engineering, looking like a giant snowflake made of metal and light, housing over 2 million beings from various species. Present at the station was our newly appointed human maintenance supervisor, Jack Murphy, along with his team of 4 human technicians. The rest of the maintenance crew consisted of 37 highly qualified engineers from 12 different species. The holo display zooms in on the station's central hub, where warning lights are beginning to flash. At 1523 GST, the station's artificial gravity generators began experiencing unexpected fluctuations. According to Safety Protocol Manual Volume 47, Section 12, Paragraph 9, Line 3, the proper response was to initiate a station-wide evacuation. Ambassador Rella nods vigorously, her warning appendages twitching in approval. A sensible precaution. Indeed, I agree. Except for one small detail. The evacuation pods could only accommodate about 60% of the station's population. The chamber fills with murmurs of concern. Even now, years later, I can feel my own anxiety rising as I watch the scene unfold. The automated systems initiated the evacuation sequence. Supervisor Murphy and his team were ordered to follow Standard Emergency Protocol 338B, secure their section, and proceed to the nearest escape pod. I paused the recording. Would anyone like to guess what they did instead? Followed orders. Representative Pax Ool suggests hopefully. I shake my head. Murphy took one look at the situation and said, and I quote, "Nah, we can fix this." The chamber erupts in predictable outrage. I raise my gavel but don't use it. Sometimes it's therapeutic to let them express their horror. The human maintenance team proceeded to do something that violated approximately, I checked my notes, 73 different safety protocols. They manually overrode the evacuation sequence and accessed the central gravity control systems,